A very good evening. You're watching The Right Stand with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Deals, drama and delusion. Mark these 3 Ds because that's what's defining Donald Trump 2.0. Laced with unpredictability, misinformation and showmanship, this US president, who's infamously earning the moniker of a mad king, has now turned global negotiations into a political circus. Why so? Because in a move that many have described as the lowest ebb of trade ties between Washington and New Delhi, the US president slapped punishing 25% additional tariff, bringing the total to 50% on Wednesday. But Prime Minister Modi has drawn the line in the sand by categorically stating that India will never compromise on the interests of its farmers, fishermen and dairy farmers. This, even if we have to pay a heavy cost for it, he is ready. India is ready for it. Nonetheless, the doubling of US tariffs on Indian goods not only marks an inflection point in India-US trade relations, but also raises a host of critical questions. What lies ahead for the Indian economy? How will US consumers be impacted by a humongous levy of 50%? Are these tariffs just a pressure tactic aimed to extract concessions from India on the trade deal negotiations? And what are India's options? To quote the Chinese ambassador to New Delhi, Xu Feihong, who took to X, "Give the bully an inch, he will take a mile." Your guess is as good as mine that it's a sharp jibe at the US president. All right, with that, let me quickly now introduce my esteemed panelists. In fact, I'm joined in by Professor Brahmachalani, who's a strategic affairs expert. Also joined in by Anand Ranganathan, who's a famous, renowned author. In fact, we are expecting Professor to just join in just a bit, but Nishant Burlia, who's the chair of the International Affairs Committee for Americas at the PhD Chamber, is also joining us right now. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining in. Anand, I want to begin with you. What do you make of the whims and fancies of the US president? What is the strategic logic behind these tariffs? Is there one at all? Because one day it is the high tariffs, one day it is the non-tariff barriers, some days it is India's purchase of Russian oil, even defense equipment, even our membership of the BRICS, which he deems as an anti-American grouping. What is the logic behind these tariffs?
Good evening and good evening to my fellow panelists. I speak here strictly as a layman. In fact, one of the vagaries of the entire imbroglio as far as tariffs is concerned, that I, being a scientist, have been poring over economics and finance and things about tariffs. But be that as it may, when you say what's the logic behind it, I'm afraid there is no logic, because when it comes to a bully, you cannot apply logic. You cannot manage a bully. You can either be defeated by a bully or you can either defeat a bully. And here I think, we need to do 4 or 5 things immediately. The first is we need to realize that you cannot manage Trump. And in doing so, realizing that you can't manage him, we need to manage our books. And if we manage our books, we'll manage Trump automatically. Now, what do I mean by that? In one thing, I would give Trump his due. He is right. We must come to the table. We must negotiate, but not with Trump, but with Russia. And I'll explain why. We must negotiate with Russia for it to give us the discount that it was giving in the second quarter 2 years ago, which is about 3 times the discount on Russian oil per barrel compared to Saudi rates giving right now, roughly around 6% right now. If we increase it to 3 or 4 times, then we would immediately offset any losses that we would gain in the entire next year because of the hiked tariffs of 50% by Trump. We must do that. So if we are able to do it, Goldman Sachs has said that our GDP, we would take a hit of about 0.3% of our GDP because of the 50% tariffs. And that would be completely offset if we manage to negotiate a better discount on the oil that we are purchasing from Russia. So that's number one. The second thing we must do is we must impose reciprocal tariffs on the USA. The bully must be looked in the eye. The bully must be shown the mirror and his hypocrisy in punishing us for buying Russian oil that he and his European chums continue to buy and were 2 years ago imploring us to buy so as to stabilize world prices so that it would comfort them. Look, China immediately imposed reciprocal tariffs the moment Trump did so, and China kept on increasing them incrementally till such time Trump relented and has now decreased them from 150% to 35%. Number three, we must impose 2% tariff and call it blood tariff on the EU and the USA as they are financing the brutal war in Ukraine where emotions are being, held to ransom and people are being killed just because the EU continues to buy 3 million tons of Russian iron and nickel, 18 million tons of Russian LNG and 8 million tons of Russian oil, and USA continues to buy 3.5 million tons of Russian fertilizers and 435 million tons of Russian uranium and 1.1 million tons of Russian oil refined by India. Now, the point is number four, India has saved 2.2 lakh crores or $26 billion in the last 3 years through buying Russian oil instead of Saudi oil. Had it not, our inflation would have increased cumulatively by 1.47% over what it has been for the past 3 years. So we must, number four, increase the quantity of oil that we buy from it. And the fifth and final, we must sit back and wait and let the bully be deranged, and if he can be deranged more than what he already is.
All right. Thank you for setting the tone of this debate, Anand. Professor Brahmachalani, I want to bring you in quickly on the point that Anand also made on China. Remember, they've managed a 90-day reprieve. Everybody is asking, what did China do and what can be India's learning? Remember, in April itself, whether it is MOFCOM or China's Customs Administration, they barred export of rare minerals from China, 7 of them, I believe, and that seems to have really worked with the United States. Is India in any kind of a position to follow a similar kind of a trajectory, or also how do you weigh in on the idea of reciprocal tariffs?
You ask a good question, Akansha. Unfortunately, US-India relations have plunged to their lowest level in this century, thanks to Trump's economic war on India and his singling India out. He has singled India out for US secondary sanctions. India has become the first victim of Trump's secondary sanctions. Now, this really clearly shows that the US is not a reliable strategic partner of India. But to answer your question, I have been advocating for quite some time, since the time Trump launched his tariff offensive, that if India were not to impose counter tariffs, it will be at the negotiating table in a much weaker position. India has to retaliate in a calibrated manner. And this is what India did during Trump's first term. In his first term, when Trump slapped India with 25% tariffs on steel, 10% on aluminum, and then stripped India's generalized system of preferences status, GSP status, which affected $5.6 billion worth of Indian exports, what did India do? It retaliated by raising tariffs on 28 specific US products, from chickpeas and lentils to diagnostic reagents and metal compounds. This came into effect in June 2019, and the Indian retaliation had a sobering effect on US policymakers. In the US, exporters lobbied the administration for tariff relief. They wanted the administration to negotiate with India. This helped catalyze trade negotiations, and eventually, on the eve of the G20 New Delhi summit, there was a broader US-India trade resolution and a rollback of tariffs by both sides.
Okay.
So we have an example of how counter tariffs had a sobering effect on Washington. So we should apply the same model again. Right now we have only issued strong statements. We have called out Washington's double standards. We have vowed to safeguard national interests. That is not sufficient.
Sure.
You have to send a message to Washington that you won't take it lying down.
Absolutely. I think the sharply worded statements have already been released. It is time for action. And like I said, Anand did set the tone for this entire discussion, because he also alluded to how we should be prioritizing Russia as well. Fred is joining us. Remember, he's a very famous journalist joining us on the show. Good to see you, Fred. Fred, many like me believe that there are no coincidences, and so perhaps I'll say that it is no coincidence that Steve Witkoff happened to be in Russia at the same time as was the Indian NSA, Mr. Doval. News has come in that President Putin will be visiting this very month. What do you make of these overtures? And many are asking the question, how much will depend on the ceasefire deadline as far as Ukraine is concerned for India?
First of all, this is much, much bigger than Russia, Ukraine. Trump is clearly trying to reshape the world economic order. He's using blunt force and these threats against countries like India. And it's not, I mean, he's citing Ukraine, but I think that even if magically the Ukraine issue went away, you'd still be facing this kind of turbulence from this new regime in Washington.
You know why I say so? Because there's no hyphenation for him at the moment between Russia and India, because they are all part and leading domineering forces of the BRICS.
Yes, and this is what it's about more than anything else. It's about the rise of the global South, a lot of changes and an inevitable decline in not just the hegemony, but the influence of the United States and second Europe. But it is an extraordinary moment in another way, because it seems like there is an imminent summit between Putin and Trump. You know, after months of grim news and pessimistic forecasts, suddenly Witkoff left Moscow yesterday, and there's talk of Putin and Trump meeting next week. And it might be followed by a trilateral meeting, including Zelensky. It seems like, if one reads the Kremlin tea leaves, which is never very easy, but it seems like Witkoff brought a peace proposal, a comprehensive peace proposal that Putin could accept. So we might be looking at, fingers crossed, a solution to this war and a peace settlement in the near future.
It's interesting you mentioned how guarded the Kremlin is. Perhaps India can learn a lesson or two. They're waiting for Steve Witkoff to communicate with the US president, and subsequently a statement from the US president before the Kremlin issues their own official statement. But let me also bring to our viewers the set of flip-flops by the US president, who's in fact trumping logic, to quote literally. The Vietnam flip-flop to begin with. The initial trade deal, remember, was placed at an 11% tariff. Donald Trump unilaterally announces 20% tariffs. Vietnam never officially accepted that deal. Then comes Donald Trump's tariff witch hunt claim. The tariff used as political tool by President Donald Trump. It imposed 50% tariff over ex-President Bolsonaro's trial as far as Brazil is concerned. He in fact accused Brazil of carrying out a witch hunt against the former Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro. US has a trade surplus with Brazil. On Canada, Donald Trump's 51st state howler, he imposed 25% tariff over alleged fentanyl crisis. That's a shocking pitch of making Canada 51st US state. Increased the tariffs to 35% over claims of Canadian inaction as far as the fentanyl trade is concerned. Let's talk about South Africa, India's another BRICS partner. Trump made white genocide claims, shocking showmanship inside the White House. Remember, that was also quite a spectacle. 30% tariff was slapped over alleged white genocide. That was a charge that he used. Arm twisting EU, Taiwan, Japan threatened EU, Taiwan and Japan with tariffs without investments in the United States. EU asked to make $600 billion investment to avoid these high tariffs. Taiwan was asked to buy 49% stake in Intel, invest $400 billion. Japan was asked to invest $550 billion to avoid tariff on auto. What's shocking is that, in fact, whether it's Taiwan or Japan, they will now be also battling 100% tariff as far as semiconductors are concerned. Let's quickly go back to our guests who continue to stay with us. Let me bring Nishant. Nishant, thank you for your patience, for waiting your turn so patiently. I want to bring you in on the issue of pharma. Remember, that is one sector which many are saying will be least impacted. We have a strong bilateral trade going on between Washington and New Delhi. But do you think that will stay at the moment, going by the way Donald Trump's continuing with that tariff tirade?
So thank you very much for inviting me to the panel. First of all, I'll start a little bit one step behind. First of all, I must compliment the Indian government on its negotiations. It's been doing so excellently, and I would say this is what you're hearing is more of a last-minute negotiation tactic, which is in the public domain, but we should be unfazed by it. Pragmatically, frankly, our services sector remains unaffected. Merchandise, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, electronics, other key sectors are also unaffected. So we have to also understand that the impact on us is very limited. And the reality today is that the US is looking to diversify supply chains, mostly out of China and Europe. And India has only become more relevant because where the only change I would make is I should point out that there's already been a financial sanction system in place under OFAC for multiple decades. Most Indian businesses, at least M&E businesses doing primary business in the US, can't do business with Russia. That's a reality of it. So this is only that's happened. What was in the financial domain has come on the trade domain. So, the reality, I do want to put this in larger context. I think it's very important to address these things rationally, and I'm very confident the government is doing that as well. As for pharma is concerned, to your specific question, 25% of the US today struggles to afford medication. I don't see a scenario where even to put up a plant in the US, it would take 2 to 3 years of capex, validations, and then you would start supply. So it's not something which is very possible in these 4 years. I think we should just take a step back, relax, negotiate well. The government's doing an excellent job. We have many strategic cards to play, and go from there.
I think Nishant's made an excellent point, Anand. The strategic cards that we have over here, take a moment to assess on the advantage that India has. And many are saying that given our trade deficit with the United States, which amounts to over $45 billion, doesn't India have an upper hand? And won't the US consumer bear the brunt of this, Anand?
Yes, the US consumer would. In fact, that is what the common logic of economics tells you. But we would also, as I said, take a brunt. In fact, Goldman Sachs has estimated 0.3% hit to our GDP. But as I said, we can completely offset it by negotiating heavy discounts from Russia on the oil that we are purchasing from it. And I gave you the figures. So if for example, right now we're getting 7% discount, if we increase it to 30%, which we were getting in Q2 of 2023, we would completely offset any losses that we would incur because of the 50% tariffs. Be that as it may, I think this is also an opportunity for us to look inward. And I think here, I'm afraid it's a tragedy of our times that our opposition is the one that has tied the hands of our Prime Minister. Because when the Prime Minister says, I will protect the interests of my farmers, I'm sorry, what he's doing by protectionism of the agricultural sector is actually completely ruining it. The entire sector is in shambles. One of the greatest days in independent India was when Prime Minister Modi announced the 3 farm laws. That would have catapulted us to a middle income economy within a decade, because if any sector is crying out for reforms, and please remember that 44% of our active labor force, which is around 300 million Indians, is involved in agriculture, a sector that contributes only 13.5% to the GDP. From production to purchase, everything is absolutely medieval. It is crying out for reforms. The opposition had promised those very farm laws as reforms. But when Modi brought it, they took a U-turn. So the tragedy is we must not, just think of protecting the farmer. We must open up this sector.
Okay, I'm running short of time. Professor Chelani, how should India respond now? Should we look at reform or leverage creation, diversify? What are the options?
We need to respond in a calm and measured manner, but we should not minimize the impact of these high tariffs. These high tariffs against India, if they remain in place, they're going to scare away foreign investors. They're going to scare away foreign companies that want to move manufacturing to India. The longer term impact is going to be serious. And Trump is also threatening to impose industry specific tariffs, for example, on pharmaceuticals. So given what Trump is up to, he's seeking to reorder global trade. He's making an example of India. For example, his executive order targeting India for purchasing Russian oil conveniently leaves out the biggest buyer of Russian oil, China. In fact, his punitive tariffs on India have little to do with Russian oil, and they have everything to do with forcing a one-sided trade deal. This is the whole game. He is using hardball tactics to strong-arm India to accept a largely one-sided trade deal, the way he strong-armed the EU to accept a trade deal on American terms. Right. And look, and I think the biggest, the most ironical part is that, you know, he has, in seeking to claim, he's claiming to punish India over Russian oil. Yet, Indian energy exports to the US, refined fuel exports, like diesel, like gasoline, like jet fuel, these refined fuels made from Russian crude, they exempt from his tariffs. They exempt both from his first round of 25% tariffs. Right, they also exempt from the punitive tariffs
I'd
of 25%.
like to give quick closing thoughts to Fred. 15 seconds, Fred. 15 seconds, Nishant. I'm so sorry I'm running short of time. But Fred, how much of a role can the Russian president play, given that he's the one at the mediating position right now between US and India?
Yes, I hope that the issue of Ukraine and Russia will be settled soon. We all you know are full of hope. But as for the larger issue, you know, Russia has been enduring the worst barrage of sanctions ever leveled against the country for the past 3 years. They found the way to survive, and I'm sure that India can rise to this challenge. It's a very creative, dynamic economy. I think that the Russian example shows you that you really shouldn't be afraid of this.
Oh, absolutely. Nishant, closing thoughts on how will India survive these 50% tariffs?
Strategic autonomy is only possible through technology. This year, more than half of car sales in China are EV. In a decade, oil won't matter to China. We have to look at the technology edge while protecting the groups most impacted.
All right. Thank you for sharing those concrete insights. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure having you here on The Right Stand. And before I end this discussion, I'd also like to take you through Donald Trump's claims on Russian oil and, in fact, how he has been making these bizarre claims. India fueling Russia's war was the first and the most bizarre claim. He said that the fact is that India is not even the top buyer of Russian oil is in fact what contradicts Donald Trump. Trump's claim on Russian oil was also that India is profiteering from the sale of Russian oil because we are selling it on the open market. The fact is that United States itself asked India to buy that Russian oil to keep the prices stable. This was under the previous Biden administration. Donald Trump seems to have forgotten to question his own country's precedent, the previous administration as well. Now, Donald Trump's claim on Indian tariffs was that India is the tariff king, also the abuser of trade duties. The fact is that India's average tariff almost is same as Donald Trump's NATO ally Turkey. India's average agricultural and non-agricultural tariff is 16%. Turkey's is at 16.2%. Trump's claim on Indian economy is that India is a dead economy. The US does very little business with India. The fact is that India is the fastest growing major global economy. US is India's 5th largest trading partner. India-US trade, in fact, valued at over $130.4 billion just in the year 2024. Also, do not forget that Donald Trump has invested heavily in the real estate market of the country. Trump's claim on India-Pak ceasefire was that he brokered the ceasefire by linking it with the trade deal. The fact is that Prime Minister Modi himself denied it in the floor of the House as far as Donald Trump's claims are concerned. And with that, we're slipping into a quick break. Don't go anywhere, because we'll be back with the return of Tulsi Irani on television. From politics all the way to prime time, here's a candid chat with Smriti Irani, aka Tulsi Irani, with CNN News 18's Anand Narasimhan. Stay tuned.
Namaste and Jai Hind. For every Krishna Bhakt, we know the importance of Tulsi. And for every viewer who's enjoyed watching her over the years and still remembers Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, we know the importance of Tulsi. So the first time, perhaps on news television, in Tulsi attire, in character, and just taking a break to have a chat with us is Smriti Irani, or should I say Tulsi Irani? Namaste, Jai Shri Krishna. How are you?
I think it's very surreal to see Tulsi character Tulsi and Tulsi.
Yeah. So that is why the importance of Tulsi per se. But how's it been for you, Smriti ji? Let me first ask you. You've always been associated with that character, and bringing that character back to life 25 years down the line. So it's more than about 2 generations through.
I think you've done as much television as I have. You have oscillated between sports and politics now. There is a premium that anybody associated with media holds when you can relive or retell something that was very popular. We are extremely grateful that our effort to reprise, to retell a story has met with success. And that is something that we hold very dear, because like you said, generations have changed. Ek pidi aati hai, ek pidi jati hai, kai pidiyan gayi. For many people, this is also that opportunity where they used to sit with their family members together 25 years ago. And many of them today have lost some members of that family. And the response has been that, I remember my mum, I used to sit with her and watch, or my grandparents and watch. So through a show, they are reliving that emotional journey themselves. And I don't think in the near past, any television show has managed to recreate that emotional moment.
The Neta to the Abhinetri. The
Neta
whole
and
thing.
Neta have always walked simultaneously. I don't think that I have ever spoken on issues of politics in this avatar. So for many people, it might be a new aspect of my persona publicly, but I have deliberately kept it separate. Today, I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm not in cabinet, I'm not in parliament, so I can afford to speak in the attire and speak to a real news channel.
True, correct.
Which is into political and social and economic affairs.
Then we have to talk politics with you, Smriti ji. So you'll have to switch between Tulsi mode and Smriti mode, or Neta and the Abhineta
Well, you're
mode.
interviewing Smriti Irani.
Yes,
I mean, Tulsi, we have to see inside.
Yeah, we will, and that's a promise that we'll do. So let me first ask you, the Prime Minister, and I think the biggest raging conversation that affects all of our lives as a nation also is this entire tariff issue and what President Trump has imposed, this ad valorem 25%. And the Prime Minister has today come out and made a statement which perhaps sends a huge message, and I would like to understand from you, where he says that it may affect me personally, but I'm not going to compromise the interests of our fisher folk, our farmers, our MSMEs, and I will not compromise Bharat's interests. Now, are we staying at a big challenge
from
now?
our country, courtesy the MEA, which reflects the Prime Minister's resolve, is extremely telling. It's very stoic, it's very powerful, and it is telling to the effect what the Prime Minister has enunciated, that India's interests will be upheld, that the interest of those in the agricultural sector will not be sacrificed. And when the Prime Minister says it, This is a Prime Minister who's lived up to his word. Yes, he is at the receiving end of the mockery of the opposition, but that has never dissuaded him from delivering for the national good. So given that the US of A has used tariffs and the tariff regime as an instrument to broker certain issues which are favorable to their country, as an Indian citizen, I'm extremely confident that the interests of India are safe in the hands of Prime Minister Modi.
But do you believe it's a huge challenge, because you also lead a lot of think tanks that takes Bharat story to the world?
Yes.
So when you interact with especially counterparts in the US of A and in the West especially, is there a colored perception of Bharat, or is there a discomfort over Bharat's rise and growth?
There is definitely, and I will say this from my own geopolitical experience, there is always a sense of discomfort when you speak with a sense of resolve, when you speak not only after reflecting on your past, but you also speak very steelily so about the prospects of your own future. As we climb the ladder of economic success globally, as the world comes to this recognition that yes, India is not to be taken lightly, as we try and now aspire to be number 3, number 2 and then number 1 in terms of the economies of the world, there will be people who will try to elbow us out of that ladder. So this is a given, this was expected. I think that for those who are not new to geopolitics, this is not a nuance that they have not seen before. The only thing is that you have a Prime Minister who doesn't take things lying down.
Sometimes does this whole aspect of sthita prajna, that means strategic restraint, does that test you?
Well, he is not only known for strategic restraint, he is also known for Sinhavalokan, which is to look back at his journey, measure the way forward. And you have to be mindful of the fact that this is a gentleman who has spent not only over 2 decades in a constitutional position of governance and not in opposition, but this is also a gentleman who has traversed across the country as a BJP Sangathan person. So he understands the needs of almost every region, every religion, every section of society. And he is also seen in the 10 years that he has led. In his 11th year, he has seen how much still needs to be done. That cannot be done when you bow your head down. That has to be done when you meet every country eye to eye.
25 years ago, you came from a particular, there were those struggles that you went through before you attained stardom. 25 years down the line, you are an achiever, you are a role model for a lot of people. Do you believe Bharat is a dead economy?
I think that those
Two people have said that.
I think those kinds of aspersions are made so that they rile you up. Anybody with experience, political, administrative, geopolitical for that matter, does not get dissuaded from such aggressive stances. Anybody who's had enough political experience knows that when it comes to a call where the country has to stay united, you let your political skirmishes be and you respond in a very measured fashion. You know that they're trying to put you into a particular corner so that they make you cop a particular issue on a particular deal. Do you make it tougher for your negotiators by falling trap to somebody else's narrative, or do you create your own conversation? So instead of responding to things which are meant to change a narrative or disrupt a narrative, I think responsible politicians should be measured in how they respond to the current situation.
You have been in opposition in the past.
Yes.
There is an opposition which was in government in the
Yes.
past. Are they behaving responsibly? Especially, is someone like Rahul Gandhi doing justice to his stature as the LOP?
I think that there is obviously an expectation from the leader of opposition's disposition, which obviously has failed citizens like you, and that is why you're ire. But I also believe that today is not the time to settle scores when it comes to India. It is not the time to settle scores when you call names out to your armed forces. It is not the time to settle scores when you try to create a disruption only for the sake of disruption. What serves purposefully the country best is when you create a conducive environment for conversation, for deliberation, for debate. Disruption becoming a norm of your politics is a poor reflection on your political capacities.
Do you also believe that the opposition has to also raise intelligent questions? There is a certain level of intelligent challenge of the government that is required. Is that happening?
You have too many expectations of the opposition. You have to recognize that they are in opposition for that very reason.
No, but
if they were genuinely intelligent, would they still be in opposition?
There are those who believe that the leader of opposition is somebody else, should be somebody else. The current person is not carrying.
That is for the opposition to decide.
Is not giving dignity to that office.
That is, if the opposition is in that kind of a disarray, that is for the opposition to decide. I, who is a member of the ruling party, cannot make choices on behalf of the opposition. You cannot expect members of the ruling party to have that kind of sympathy for the opposition. If they are in a state of disarray, that is not something which would sadden me. I believe that as a citizen, would I want my Sansad to be more proactive? Yes. I would like my government to be given the opportunity to speak in detail on every issue. But for that government to speak, there has to be an atmosphere where deliberation and debate is encouraged.
Now to you, 2024, there was a change in rules. There was a setback that happened in terms of an electoral loss. Has the party sidelined you? Have you come to terms with the defeat?
Who was I with yesterday? It's a very weird question to ask.
No, those are. I have to ask you. I have to ask you. Say, she was a hotshot mantri. Where is she now? Oh, she's got to go back to play Tulsi Irani because she's not getting a political career.
If you're not in parliament, now those basics of how our constitution works are known to you. So I'm a bit flabbergasted that you would ask me such a question.
So there is a perception. So I want you to dispel it and say your piece.
I'm sure you've seen me with the national president yesterday. I'm sure you've not missed the fact that I've been appointed to the Prime Minister's Council. So those who are sidelined never get appointed to the Prime Minister's Council, for the Prime Minister's Museum for that matter, or have audience with the National President of the Bharatiya Janata Party. There is obviously a desire to seek some kind of a response from me, but I think that this whole Zen-like aura of mine is disturbing a lot of people.
But how difficult or easy was for you to accept that there is going to be a different role, there's going to be a shift?
I lost an election in 2004. I lost an election in 2014. How different is it for me now in 2024
Because you also evolved as a leader, haven't you? Yeah, you've also gotten to a place of power, dominant policy.
I was as tenacious in 2004 as I am in 2020.
That is an inherent characteristic, but in terms of experience also you evolved. So, so did it take some time?
No, I think that you would be well positioned to read Rudyard Kipling's If. Have you read it ever?
No,
it's a lovely poem. It teaches about how you should teach success and failure just the same.
Correct.
And if you're somebody who is spiritually inclined, what does the Gita teach you? So I've read it. I've ingrained it into my life very well.
Yeah,
and I think what you
see,
you have to have, because imagine this: if I had won 2004, then I wouldn't have fought Amethi 2014. If I had won 2014 from Amethi, then I would not be, completing my 2 terms in Rajya Sabha. I'm a 3-term MP. So there are many ifs and buts, and life is to be led in between.
This talk that आपने दिल्ली छोड़ दिया, अब आप मुंबई में रहते हो.
नड्डा जी तो दिल्ली में है.
तो आप मुंबई में रहते हो.
You last saw me in the Prime Minister's Council.
And you're so much further away from Amethi. So what happens to the house in Amethi?
Last saw me in the Prime Minister's Council meeting at Teen Murti. You last saw me yesterday. You saw me with Nadda ji in Delhi.
Correct.
So I guess I'm omnipresent now. I'm everywhere.
So what about Amethi? Have you given up on Amethi?
No, I have a home there. How can I give up on a house? How can I give up on home? How can I give up on my own people? See, the difference is when I went in 2014 to Amethi, BJP did not have a government in Uttar Pradesh. I had a party, Sangathan, which had not polled more than 30,000 votes. stalwarts like Sharad Yadav, Maneka Gandhi, they had all lost. Many of the stalwarts of Indian politics, unki zamanat zabt ho gayi thi. Now for me, in 22 days to go from 30,000 votes to 3 lakh votes was unheard of in Amethi. We won every assembly seat while I was there. We had never won Zilla Parishad. I made sure that we won the first Zilla Parishad ever in the history of our party in Amethi. By the time Yogi ji came as CM, I had 2 Vidhayaks from Amethi who were ministers in his government. My politics has never been only about me. It's been about my party. It's been about the policy. It's been about what I can contribute to my country. Did I build my party by the time I finished my 10-year stint in Amethi? There were 1 lakh BJP members there. So in a district where you don't get more than 30,000 votes, in 10 years to create 1 lakh members, that's quite an amount of work.
I remember.
Apart from what I did.
True, and I tracked you through Amethi, and I've come down to Amethi and spoken with you.
So I'm talking about the Sangathan aspect.
No, but despite all of that, did you reflect on what happened in 24?
I know what happened in 24. My party knows what happened in 24. But the honest to God truth is there are many truths that I will not speak on camera. And I think that one is mature enough to realize most people in politics, when they are envisaged, when they are looked upon by citizens, and especially after a loss, the normal conversation among citizens is, "Arey kaam nahi kiya tha." In terms of my political journey, citizens only ask one question: "Itna kaam karne ke baad bhi?"
Kitna kaam karega?
And I'm happy that at least I'm not besmirched ki kuch nahi kiya. The concern of the average citizen is, "Itna kaam kiya, itna build kiya." But that is politics.
But there are also people who always constantly try to pull you down.
But that is a given in politics. To say that it only happens to Smriti Irani is to paint me as one saint when everybody is a sinner who's trying to stone me to death.
Correct. But those who, how do you deal with that?
You don't.
You don't.
You just keep carrying forward. Because if you get so engrossed in who's pulling you down, you're always looking down. The idea is to keep looking up.
Oh, that's a nice one. I'm going to take a note of that. The other part, and I know because viewers, she's not only been part of the BJP for a long time, she's also been part of the RSS, and there is a history. Family has also got an association. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Correct. So, this whole thing about the court ruling that came about Bhagwa Atankwad and, the acquittal at the Malegaon 2008. What's your point of view there?
I think we knew that the Congress party in the UPA regime was trying to ensure that it spoke in a forked tongue. That while it said terror has no religion, it was particularly trying to target the Hindu religion. Because for them, how do you engage or how do you stifle the growth of the BJP is to target the religion. BJP is not a religious-based party.
But it is
a nationalist party.
But it's seen as a Hindutwa party.
And the RSS works for Hindutva, but it works predominantly for the country, for culture. So I think that somebody took a misstep in the Congress regime and deliberately targeted the religion while they wanted to target us as organizations and entities. At the end of the day, I think on the basis of evidence, the courts have ruled, and hence to opine on the opinion of the court would be a bit juvenile. But I'm of the opinion people always knew that saffron and terror don't go hand in hand.
What happened with Sadhvi Prachi? The way she was treated, the torture that she went through. There are many of the acquitted who believe that this is only faisla. It's not justice. It's not nyaya yet, because those who inflicted that torture haven't been punished.
Can you ever give her time back? Can you give her dignity back? Not only her, but others. Can you give their dignity back? Can you give the years of their lives back? Can you give them the peace of mind when they were being tortured back? So no matter what comes from a court judgment, ultimately a human being has lost much which cannot be defined.
So, but those who inflicted that, shouldn't they be criminally pulled up?
Like I said, for me to opine on the opinion of not only the courts, but also what the government can or may do is something which I would be very restrained on. But I believe that those who are riled up or are justly so, because at the end of the day, it's a woman's dignity that was totally destroyed. I have seen the human being. I have seen the torture. It is very visible on their face. But that is not the only person. There were others who were also deliberately embroiled. And I'm of the opinion that Derai Durustai justice was done. I'm grateful for that. Because can you imagine endlessly going from one courtroom to another and justice not being given even this much? That is a bigger horror. As somebody who has chased judgments in court in a personal capacity, I cannot imagine the horrors that they have gone through.
But this whole attacking Hindutva, even with Op Sindoor and Op Mahadev, you had former chief ministers like Prithviraj Chavan and all saying कि इसको भी भगवाधारी भगवागिरी कर रहे हैं, यहाँ पर भी हिंदुत्वाइजेशन हो रहा है.
But then what happened in Pahalgam? Victims were told, जाके मोदी को बोल दो. क्यों? There was religious identification. They were shot down for the faith, for the religion that they practice.
It was checked also. Khatna hua hai ki nahi, they were stripped
That's
and
what I'm
checked.
saying.
Yeah.
So, instead of reflecting on what an opposition leader has to say, the country has rejected them. So why should I waste my time reflecting on them?
We're going to take a pause here. जैसे हमने कहा था, there will be Smriti and there will be Tulsi. Both will be there. अब आपको अंदर लिए चलते हैं, इनके घर में, इनके सेट में क्या हो रहा है. So she's conversing with us in between shots, and that it's like second nature. So we are in the dining hall of Shanti Niketan. That's what it is. It's a set, viewers. So it's quite surreal. How
For
do
you it is,
Yeah.
because you've seen me in both the avatars. So I saw you absolutely gobsmacked behind the monitor.
Yeah, because you're not only dressed as Tulsi Irani, but I've seen Tulsi get into character, So Smriti Irani becomes Tulsi Irani like that in a split second when moment they say action. It was a one take shot.
Sounds very ominous.
No, but
It's another human being.
not just that, another human being. I'm just also asking you: is this second skin to you now? Do you sometimes are the lines blurred between Smriti and Tulsi? That's what I'm asking.
I've tried to play the character as close to the real me as possible, with many obviously changes in how that character responds to certain situations as compared to the real me. So that is why for people who've seen the real me or the political me, it's a bit surreal to see me in this avatar. Because those who have seen me politically only on camera, they know of somebody either who is extremely either angry at an issue or is very verbose on a particular issue. Of late people say that why are you so stoic politically? Those who know me in real life, they know that I'm also somebody with a modicum of sense of humor. So they see the transference of that humor onto the character at times. So yeah, it is surreal for people who watch me. It's surreal for people who know me. It's not.
No, for you?
For you. Well, for me, it's not.
Is any part of Tulsi part of Smriti Irani?
I think the question has to be asked,
the other way around?
Is Smriti there in Tulsi? What I'm very lucky about, I think, is that there are certain sensibilities that one picks up on the way in one's political or social journey, in one's journey as a family person. The creators, the channel, the platform itself, and we sat together as to how would we like to portray a particular story. We were very mindful of the fact that we want to contextualize it in terms of certain real life experiences that people are having. Today I can very, very positively and with a great sense of modesty say there is nothing on television that can guarantee that they will be played 25 years from now. The fact that we could play out a story 25 years ago and today are very well received speaks a lot about how the character is received as a family person.
So that evolution 25 years later, the audience has also evolved.
Yes.
Somewhere the mindset remains the same. The audience has also evolved.
No, I think that when 25 years ago we played out the story, we took up issues like marital rape. And Anand, if you remember, 25 years ago and even today, it's a very difficult conversation to have.
Yes.
And especially when you're in a one TV setup, in a one TV home where the whole family comes together. It's a sensitive topic to have discussed through a show. We spoke about euthanasia 25 years ago. Even today, it's a difficult conversation to have. Today, you will not find female protagonists who will have a pot shot taken at them about weight, age, looks, about whether they can, withstand being the punching bag and not speak volumes. Also, we've had the male character for the first time speak up on issues like, why can't my girl be more educated? Why shouldn't my boys know how to make things around the kitchen?
So you're teaching them to make chai?
Bhajiyas have also been made. Chai has
she
also
made amazing
been
chai for us. We couldn't get that on tape, but it was great chai, and it's actually a real kitchen. Right? It's a set, viewers.
Functional kitchen.
It's a functional kitchen.
The fact that we have male actors also contributing to that conversation again is a huge shift, because most male characters on television today are not having those kind of conversations within the family setup that is being imagined for them, or speaking to the viewers. So we have the Mihir character speaking up for the wife, for the daughter.
But there are a lot of younger actors. So
Yes.
do they look at you as an actor, or do they look at
What is extremely satisfying for me is the fact that many of them discuss politics. They want to know how Parliament works. Amar is the one.
Oh, just walking in. Hi. So that's the quintessential Mihir.
I spoke about how I said make sure that bail is a rule and not an exception.
Oh, yeah.
And then one of your journalists called up and said, how did he say this?
So that's the influence that the politician and the person who's read the law. They bring it in.
It's nice when you, I mean, he's not mic'd up.
Yeah,
but-
so you have
I'm speaking here.
So I think what is, he was saying that you become I don't know, the idea is it's a group of actors. So when you can enhance each other's value, even the youngsters who are working today, they get a larger body of work and opportunity because they're a part of this project, which means they financially benefit from it.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is it the same Smriti, or has she changed?
She's much.
Look at him.
She's much bigger asset than she was earlier for the show. I can say that. Being a politician adds a value to the show.
He's also become the politician.
He's talking about assets.
No, because like she said, one line she added about the law. Who will know better than her? Yeah.
But it also has to be Anand, a partnership.
Yeah.
You know, you yourself are a working professional in television. You may have lots of suggestions. Your co-worker, your colleague may not be open to those suggestions.
Right.
What we've managed to create on this set is that we all kind of support each other, which includes, you've seen
We've always done that.
Yeah.
We've
Even
done that.
first season
That
also.
is how you create history. You don't create history in isolation.
Lovely.
You always create history. You create a legacy. When
team is
people
there.
when you have a great team, you have a confluence of ideas and aspirations.
Fantastic. तो इनका भी शॉट रेडी है.
अरे तेरे शॉट में मैं हूँ.
ये भी है
तो दोनों साथ में, तो अभी साथ में हम सबको थैंक यू करते हैं. थैंक यू वेरी वेरी मच.
नमस्ते के बोल में आ जाओ.
एक साथ. हाँ.
जय श्री कृष्ण.
जय श्री कृष्णा. Now
Thank
for us
you.
to get behind the camera, they go and take their
Earn
spot.
our living and my paycheck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
The political temperature in India is rising sharply in the wake of US President Donald Trump's announcement of a steep 25% tariff hike on Indian imports. So this is the additional 25% that one's talking about. This brings the total punitive duty to a staggering 50%. This has now triggered a fierce backlash, not just diplomatically, but also politically here at home. The opposition, led by the Congress party, has launched a scathing attack on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, called the tariff an economic blackmail, accusing the US of trying to bully India into an unfair trade deal. He also ended up warning the Prime Minister that Prime Minister Modi must not let his weakness override the interests of the Indian people. Congress leaders have also invoked the legacy of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, urging Prime Minister Modi to learn from her courage in standing up to the American pressure instead of defaming her.
I see. Well, I mean, I don't think that's particularly good news for us, but, you know, obviously if that takes our total tariffs to 50%, then that's going to make our goods unaffordable to a lot of people in America. And in particularly when you're looking at these percentages, you have to compare them with the tariffs being levied on some of our competitors. And I'm afraid if you look at people like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, even Bangladesh and Pakistan have lower tariffs than us, then ultimately people will not be buying goods from us in America if they can buy them cheaper elsewhere. So that's not very good for our exports to America. This means we need to very seriously diversify to other countries and other markets which may be interested in what we have to offer.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी को ये बात 10 साल पहले सोचना था कि हमें अपने किसानों के हित के लिए, खेती-बाड़ी के लिए, दूध और दूध के बने हुए तमाम पदार्थों को लेकर के हमें हमेशा चिंतित रहना चाहिए और प्राथमिकता पर हमें अपने हर सेक्टर का ध्यान रखना है। जो लोग ये दावा करते थे कि दुनिया में सबसे मजबूत रिश्ते हैं, कोई देश ऐसा नहीं छूटा होगा जहां पर भारत को सम्मान न मिला हो, उसके बाद आज ये कहना पड़ रहा हो सरकार को, तो ये बड़े दुखद है क्योंकि हम फॉरेन पॉलिसी पर पूरी तरह असफल रहे हैं और जिस तरह लगातार पाबंदियां लगती जा रही हैं, ये कहीं ना कहीं हमारा देश संकट में है, अर्थव्यवस्था संकट में है, किसान संकट में है, नौजवान संकट में है, पूरा चौतरफा हमारा भारत घिर गया है।
Let me take this across to my colleagues Arunima and Pallavi, who are now with us on the broadcast. Arunima, coming to you first, the exact demand of the opposition. Are they calling in for an all-party meeting? What is it that they are trying on doing when they are attacking the government and in turn the Prime Minister over what they are suggesting to be a failed foreign policy on part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
Yes, Parliament is in session, so the opposition wants to utilize that platform to have a discussion on what is happening. There have been multiple, statements given as well. Hibi, then, for example, the Congress member of Parliament from Kerala, all the coastal areas are concerned because, shrimp industry, for example, is going to suffer the most. Ecuador, Guatemala, these are competitors, and if Indian shrimp industry has to face a 50% tariff, then their good becomes unaffordable for people in the United States. So that's a point that these MPs are raising. They're also saying that, for example, Jairam Ramesh, he spoke about hug diplomacy. Hug diplomacy is what he called it, saying everywhere you went, you said this person was your friend, you gave them a tight hug, but clearly that form of diplomacy is not working. Abhishek Banerjee too has taken potshot. You heard Akhilesh Yadav from Samajwadi Party also. They're all questioning that this line of foreign policy where personal charisma of the Prime Minister was showcased clearly is not working as far as Donald Trump is concerned. So they are saying India must stand strong and not give in to this economic blackmail, as Rahul Gandhi labelled it. But at the same time, they also want to utilize the parliamentary forum to have a threadbare discussion on what the government's plan is. But things are in such a delicate position. I do not think government will be in a position to lay its cards on the floor of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. It's a delicate situation currently.
Okay. And Pallavi, Rahul Gandhi calls it economic blackmail on part of America. But when the Congress goes ahead and says take a leaf out of the Indira Gandhi playbook, why bring in history? When the BJP or the NDA goes on to do it, raking in Nehru or Indira Gandhi, then the Congress cries foul. Why this in this case then?
Here we have to understand the politics behind it. In 2014, when Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister, he became the PM on the plank of being a very strong leader, and Dr. Manmohan Singh and the Congress was projected as being a very weak government, which was subservient. In fact, I remember those potshots were often taken at Dr. Manmohan Singh for selling out the country because his heart was fixed on the Indo-US nuclear deal. Today, the Congress party feels that it's revenge time. So here they're trying to project, and if you go by many of the social media posts of the Congress party, it actually shows a caricature of the Prime Minister and next to Indira Gandhi, where they show Indira Gandhi telling the Prime Minister that you have to learn from me to stand up to America. That is the politics behind it, to project the Prime Minister as someone who's so weak that he is perhaps being allowed himself to be bullied by the American president. That is the politics behind it. You're going to hear that roughly around 1:30 when Rahul Gandhi is going to be doing that press conference later today on the SIR issue and obviously on the tariff Trump issue. So repeated comments coming in from the opposition parties telling them that government needs to do the right thing. Government, as of now, I don't see them very phased. They are very unfazed about it.
Good evening. You're watching Brass Tacks with me, Poonam Burde. US President Donald Trump has embarked on what one would call a tariff tantrum. First, he imposed 26% tariffs on Indian goods back in April. That was shortly put on hold. What followed were negotiations on a trade deal. Those negotiations are still on. But despite that, Donald Trump last week announced 25% tariff on India. And yesterday, he doubled down. He raised it up to 50% with a caveat that there are 21 days before it comes into effect. He's even threatened to raise it further. Now, while India is in no mood to buckle down or to bow down to this pressure tactic that's coming to the fore from the United States, New Delhi has made it clear that there is a level of national interest that needs to be looked at, and that is exactly what we are going to do, that we're not going